मैं आश्चर्यचकित हूँ। मालूम इस बात सीरियस नहीं, हंसने वाली बात नहीं है, हंसने वाली बात बिल्कुल भी नहीं है, ठीक है।
लेकिन बोली दे
चेहरे चमक ही नहीं है तो क्या मैं वही सबसे ज्यादा चमक होनी चाहिए चेहरे।
लिखा कि बलम
तोड़ के भरम
तोड़ के बलम।
अबे क्या कैसे होता है
ये तो नेटवर्क प्रॉब्लम है।
अब
वाईफाई लगाएंगे ना करके चलने करके
चार्जर कहाँ है
बंद कर दिया।
हाँ
लगाए
अबे थोड़ा स्ट्रीम होगा 12:30 होने वाला है।
अरे श्री को कैसे
दबाना पड़ता है बे।
ड्राइव होगा ना अंदर में
अभी अभी यहाँ बस आने से नेटवर्क ठीक है।
भाई कल का कुछ ऑप्शन है
देखो तो मैं लाइव स्ट्रीम काम कर रही कि नहीं, ओपन करके देख तो बैंक ऐसा। शर्मा जी ने भी कहा कर देखता है शर्मा जी। मैं ऊपर ही जाता हूँ मैं।
अपनी सारी लाल याद उतरने लगा। एक पता कर कौन से पार्टी से शायद उसके साथ थे। अभी चुनाव आया नहीं और लड़ने लगा, लड़ने वाले अभी 2 साल सरकार में। अरे 2017 के शुरू में ना
इसका याद है
हाँ हो गया था वही शुरू पे मान लो सत्यनारायण भी होगा और पहले भी होगा। Electric ban on earth. भगवान सिंह को भी बोला होता तो समझ नहीं सकता। माइक गाल लेता है उसका। और हिंदी की सियासी पैगाम कहाँ हो सरकार को इससे गाते हैं मतलब 11 साल भारत उसका तो बता दो 7 साल पहले 7 साल 5 साल क्या रहे 11 साल की उम्र में वो दुनिया के सामने रिप्रेजेंट हुआ या लॉन्च हुआ। तो ये करे
अबे फोन को कुछ मत करना, लाइव चल रहा है अपने आप ऑटोमेटिक इवेंट ने नेटवर्क पर रख दिया हूँ देखना मत।
97 में उसकी उम्र थी 11 साल, 2002 में कितनी होगी 16 साल। उसमें कौन सिंगर थे वो 16 साल का रहेगा। अबे तो रिलेट है अब मैं वही बोल रहा हूँ वो 5-6 का ही है तू बोल रहा है कि एक का
अबे हर चला कोई गंदा
बोल ना मैं चल
नहीं चल
बोल रहा है कि कोई एक का एक का वीडियो नहीं है वीडियो तो बोलता 5-6 साल का है
उसी कम करो
इतना पता है कि 11-12 साल का लॉलीपॉप हुआ है इंडिया में तो बता तो रहा हूँ उसका भी आया तो 12 साल इसका बस क्या नाम से लिखा है सिंगर का भी
चल रहा है इसका
अबे
दो सेकंड
अबे लाइट कितना नीचे तक आ गया दो
अभी हिस्ट्री अब होम बटन दबा
अबे नहीं हट जा ऊपर से लिखा है ना लाइट
अरे साले को हिस्ट्री देखना हो रहा है एक बार में हिस्ट्री हो रहा है चल रहा है लाइव अबे स्क्रीन रिकॉर्डर से लाइव है स्क्रीन रिकॉर्डर से बंद हो गया मैं कहाँ जा रहा हूँ इधर नहीं तो
बिहारी 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 you want to see my ass
नहीं इन लोग का सांस 3 गलत नाम है इसमें ऐसे हो सकता अबे ऐसे ऐसे भाई अब बीच में डॉट डाले हम लोग एस डॉट ए डॉट
जल्दी कर
देखो देखो जैसे वो सुबह अंकित और ऐसे को था हां सूरज सुनी तो अंकित मेरा एक बात वही है हां तो वही का बात है कि अच्छा कोई लीडर ही बना रहे हो
एस सही बोल
टी एस बोल रहा हूं ए डबल एस 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 ए डबल एस
रहेगा
पहले वही डाल देते पढ़ना
ऐसा
ओके वही पढ़ी के जब
तेरा ऐश है
उसका ऐस पढ़ के ना है
तेरा पढ़ेंगे
जितना जोर से पहले पढ़ के दिन के 40 मिनट किए ना पहले ना झाड़ू तो लगा दे भाई गंदा है मेरे को लगा रहा हूं साले
हुआ कि नहीं पे तेरा
नहीं हो रहा
इसका मल्टी स्क्रीन
आ गया इंग्लिश तक आ गया
अरे भाई मेरा
इतना आसान होता है तो दिक्कत की किस बात की
सर वो लोग आने भाई 11 साल अब कहां से हो सकते
वैसे मैं बहुत बार सुना हूँ गाना लाइव भी किया वीडियो को
क्या कर रहे हो
अरे पोकोफोन F1 का
हमें बाइक का खुद दे
अरे मेरे को देखना है अभी 1 मिनट में चालू हो जाएगा
रैप तो रफ्तार की इतना पसंद है
ओके आओ कर मीटिंग में इतना अबे तो मम्मी को
हेलो
बेटा 2 साल बाद क्या बोलते हैं यार 2 साल बाद
खाना जाते हैं
ये आपका पूरा भी रखकर हम बड़ा स्टार है
अरे भाई
लेकिन बस
वर्क नहीं करता अरे चेक करना चाहिए अबे तो स्ट्रीम उसमें लगाएंगे ना स्ट्रीमिंग चल रहा है बकलोल है लाइव इवेंट चल रहा है लैपटॉप में करना तो एक घंटे में
आइडिया क्यों लगाती है ये वाला लगाई
बड़ा लेवल पे
ये वाले का नहीं आता
वो क्या रहा है हाँ
इवेंट का स्ट्रीमिंग हो रहा है
मतलब कभी सम्मेलन टाइप ऑनलाइन नहीं इन लोग का ऑनलाइन कभी सम्मेलन हुआ
जैसे लाइव स्ट्रीम होता है ना
पार्टिसिपेट किया था
हां सनिया को तुरंत
हुआ वैसे कहाँ खोज रहे हैं हम
अब गाना बहुत तगड़ा था भाई, मालूम तो सुनना है।
कौन गाना सुनता है?
अब वही तो
अबे बाद में बोल जाएगा।
अबे भाई एक बात
अबे साला 5 मिनट से रुका हूँ।
तेरे को जब मालूम ही नहीं है कि गाना कौन सा लाइक वीडियो में नहीं आया मतलब लाइक वीडियो
लाइक किया ना तो पहले उसको मेरा करना था, लाइक को इस बार खोल के देखना। अबे तुम मेरे को दिखा करो ना, यूट्यूब में काम करना है।
ये ले
कहाँ क्या कर रही है? व्हाट्सएप कहाँ तेरा? मेरे वाला
फिल्मा
लिंक नहीं डाला था।
नहीं दे तो ना
कहाँ गई मेरा?
नाम गंगा दो क्या नाम सब गाने का बात सुन रही चला तेरा बात रिकॉर्ड है
कहाँ जा रहे हैं?
बोला बात कर
तो बाहर झाड़ तो लगा दो बे।
पैसा ही के खाली बाबा का चालू बात करते हैं अभी थोड़ा बदल के बात मुझे अच्छा नहीं लग रहा है
तो फोन में नेट कैसे नहीं चलता है?
अब इधर आ क्या बोलता है कितने दिन में दाढ़ी बढ़ाने के लिए कुछ बता इतना खुशी ना मेरे हार्मोन की मात्रा ज़्यादा है इसमें कितना खुशी मेरा बाल दिखाना है मेरे दोनों कुछ भी हो तो चेहरे पे चमक चमक लेके चाट दूंगा क्या लगेगा हाँ खड़ा हो जाएगा ना पाँच हालात आकर्षण करना कैसा चमक चाहिए समझेगा ही अश्विनी कब है
अरे चालू में खुले नहीं रहे बे।
एस
हुआ रे पोकोफोन
को भी एस बोलते हैं तो तुमको एस ही है
लाइव चल रहा है।
Good afternoon, everyone. How is everyone doing? As well as all those who are watching us over the live stream today. Welcome to the global lots to show you today. In the past couple of weeks, there have been Okay, my name is Alvin, and I'm head of Poco Global. And backed by Xiaomi. So get Xiaomi's resources. The Poco team is in charge of product, marketing, and sales, which means you can actually expect a different, somewhat interesting, it's cool, because we have the backing of one of the greatest smartphone brands in the world today. In fact, Xiaomi has 6 factories in India producing millions and millions of smartphones every single month. Vendors in India, just in case you have some concerns, which we don't expect to have. And as we all know, quality is the lifeline of our business. Standards that you would expect from a Xiaomi phone. Already, I'm pleased to tell you that Manu is also in the audience with us today. So you can see there are 8 of us, and we look pretty happy. All right? Pretty well rested, pretty happy, pretty relaxed. We come from very different backgrounds. It is a very diverse team. Some of us grew up in Singapore, in China, in India, and in America. But despite such cultural differences, we actually share one thing in common, and that is and we believe this time we can contribute something different and inject some new energy to the industry. Many months ago, the 8 of us sat together and thought a little bit more about how the smartphone industry is being developed. Where is it heading? What are the trends? We realized that if we really drill down to the basics of smartphones, there are 5 or 6 areas that constitutes the essentials of a flagship smartphone. Its processor. But as competition becomes more fierce, as innovation becomes incremental, be relevant to users, but they certainly add to the cost, which leads to this problem. The team has seen that there are more and more pricing out many consumers, many tech enthusiasts from the opportunity of trying the latest technologies. Poco wanted to build something that bucked this trend. If you think about it, why are the smartphones becoming more expensive? It's because a lot of these brands, they are trying to build if you try to be good at everything, you end up not being best at anything. Which is why Poco's mission is to focus on innovations that truly matter. We are determined to build products that allow many, many consumers to be able to try out the latest technologies that truly make a difference in your lives. This is a very difficult task. It is no easy feat. But we feel like this is necessary. After many months of hard work, I'm pleased to tell you that Poco is proud to say that we are the champion of performance. Performance matters. Speed matters. The ability to enjoy your smartphone on a day-to-day basis without any lags matters. Do you agree? So our first product embodies this philosophy, this belief, this need that performance should be a basic right to smartphone users. We are proud to call this cool product the Poco F1. And of course, we need to give it the most powerful slogan ever. And we are calling it the true master of speed. I really think you will all love it. So, without more suspense, without further ado, let me welcome
Thanks, man. Hello, everyone. How are you? It's nice to finally our first product, the Poco F1. This has literally been one of my dream phones. That is something that I've wanted in a very different phone from what you see on the market today. So even if you think you already know everything about the phone, stick with us. All right. So today I'm going to talk about three things: performance, camera, and experience. And we believe that these three things have the biggest impact on how you ultimately feel we wanted to focus on the things that really matter for performance. And everybody knows top of the line Snapdragon 845. And there are actually very few phones sold in India today that are process. This process offers clock speeds of up to 2.8 gigahertz while maintaining good battery life and good thermal performance. And the Adreno 630 GPU has a 30% improved performance versus the previous generation from Snapdragon 835. And this is an important point, which I'll touch on in a later slide, but this is a 30% improvement on Qualcomm's already super fast GPU. It absolutely flies for gaming, no matter how heavy. So Qualcomm also made great efforts to improve the AI performance. Snapdragon 845 has 3 times the performance on AI tasks when it is compared to 835. This helps a lot on things particularly around the camera, which is something that we'll touch on later in the presentation. So let's look at how Snapdragon 845 stacks up to some of the other Android flagship SoCs. Here's the Kirin 970, the Exynos 9810, and you can see that the Snapdragon 845 performance is better. Here we're showing the Antutu scores. It's about a 10% improvement versus Samsung's chip, and this is what they use in all their flagship devices here in India, and over a 35% improvement when compared to the Kirin 970. But I mentioned the GPU earlier, so let's hone in on that specifically. We took a look at the GFX bench. This is Manhattan off screen, and this is where the 845 really shines. It's 30% better in GPU than the Exynos 9810, and more than 60% better than the Kirin 970. The Adreno 630 absolutely destroys the competition here. And as many of you know, GPU is something that's becoming more important today as people start playing the latest crop of mobile games, which are more graphics intensive. So if you're playing any of those games, you want the latest GPU, not something that's 1 or even 2 generations old when it comes to GPU performance. So let's talk a little bit about peak scores. I think we talked about this number in a little while ago. This was our Antutu benchmark. We reached nearly 300,000 in the peak score, and this makes it one of the fastest Android smartphones around. But peak scores aren't the only thing that matter. Benchmarks don't tell the whole story. Because when running at peak speeds for a long period of time, the typical smartphone gets slower. You know, when you're doing things like gaming or running hotter is slower. So we wanted to solve this. And we added something we're calling liquid cool. It's pretty sweet. What do you think? This is a water cooling technology, and basically it's a copper heatsink with some water vapor inside, and it's placed on top of the chipset, which cools down your phone much more quickly, allowing it to run at higher speeds for much longer. So let's check this out inside the phone. So here's a quick illustration. The SoC is up there on the top left, and this is in a situation playing a game, starts generating some heat. So in the Poco F1, we have this copper heatsink that sits on top of it. This is the blue line here. We can actually run that again. So this is the copper heatsink, the blue line. Run that again. So as you can see, what happens here is the heat generated by the SoC is distributed more evenly throughout the phone and cools down the CPU, so it can run at peak performance for a longer period of time. And when we compared this thermal performance to in our labs, liquid cool dissipates heat 300% faster than devices without it. And this is really useful in practice. And so because of liquid cool, paired with benchmark scores are nice, but we believe that its sustained performance is what really matters. So let's see how this translates in results. This is a test we ran versus the OnePlus 6. It's the same SoC without any water cooling technology. If you'll notice up at the top, the ambient temperature is hot for some places, but rather normal here, particularly in Delhi. It's an ambient temperature of 35 degrees. And so what we did was we ran Antutu 6 times, and this was to simulate peak performance or intensive performance over a longer period of time. And this is the result from the first test. You know, it's about the same. So let's see what happens when we start running this over time. So for the first few runs, again, performance is about the same. But as we start doing this over time, thermal control kicks in. And this is because without any water cooling, the phone starts to heat up, clock speed goes down, and ultimately, your performance degrades. And this is what we mean when we say speed. We're not just talking about that big benchmark score, although it is pretty cool. We mean actual real-world speed. When you play a game for half an hour, it should be the same speed the whole time. And so we believe that Poco F1 has set a new standard for performance. All right, pretty cool so far? That was not a pun, not intended, but okay. So let's talk about my favorite thing, which is battery life. And for years, this has been a key feature that everybody tells us they love. It's one of the reasons why Redmi phones have been so successful. But typical flagship phones compromise on battery life. Generally speaking, in a flagship phone, you usually get around 3,000 mAh. And for some reason, if you want great battery life, you generally have to buy a mid-range phone. But since we were building the Poco F1 from the ground up, without any of this baggage, this trend really didn't make any sense to us. And so with the Poco F1, we put that same amazing 4,000 mAh battery that everybody loves. And this is a key product decision that we made early on. It seems like common sense, and almost everybody, whether it's enthusiasts or your mom or dad, everybody wants better battery life. And yet, in the race to outdo one another, flagship devices seem to have forgotten this. And this 4,000 mAh battery is 30% higher than other popular models, things like the S9, and this really makes a difference in practice. So let's take a look at some of the numbers here. You have 8 hours of gaming, 146 hours of music. I think that translates to around 6 days. But most importantly, it reduces anxiety. You don't need to constantly check your battery life. You don't need to worry about the next time you might be next to a power outlet. With the Poco F1, you get this great battery life, and finally, it's paired with the flagship SoC, the Snapdragon 845. And once you get used to phones with 4,000 mAh batteries, it's hard to change to anything else. And so I posted this just now on Twitter, but we met with a bunch of you guys I think in January, a couple months ago. And if you ask me, the most important thing is a 4,000 mAh battery. I actually don't think you need any sort of fast charging because it lasts the whole day. But we decided to include Quick Charge 3.0 because almost everybody across the board told us that you want both. And it doesn't just support it. We're including the 9-volt 2-amp charger in the box. Of course, we couldn't reveal all of this stuff when we were talking about it at the time, but we did listen to what you guys told us. And I think it pretty much speaks for itself. There's a couple of other things we can show you later. So again, this comes in the box, standard. All right, 4G Plus, and I think this is something that's pretty new. We worked really closely with Qualcomm on this to make the network performance fast. This is one of the first devices with 4G Plus here in India. So I can explain a little bit about it. Typically, your phone is connected to a single radio band. But with 4G Plus, it combines radio frequencies, different radio frequencies, to give you both faster network performance and better coverage. And it's important to note, one of the reasons why this is not very common here in India is the combinations that are required, the spectrum combinations that are required to support 4G Plus here are pretty unique. They're actually not really used anywhere else in the world.
Buffering.
Thing other than speed, many of you make VoLTE calls, and this is where 4G Plus can also help you a lot. So the Poco F1, of course, supports dual VoLTE, and for those of you that do make VoLTE calls, you may have noticed that you tend to see more call drops indoors. And this, again, is where being able to combine two different frequencies lets us take advantage of both things. You get the high quality audio you're used to, and then better coverage indoors from the lower frequency. So it's really, really useful. You'll see the icon once you get the phone in the top right of your display. Let us know what you think. It's a really new thing, and we're really glad to be able to bring it to India in one of the first devices ever. All right, let's talk about some other stuff with speed. Memory. So it's up to 8 gigabytes of LPDDR4X RAM, up to 256 gigabytes of internal storage. And I want to point out this bottom thing over here. It's the UFS 2.1 storage. This is an area where having access to Xiaomi's scale and particularly supply chain is critical for our success. We're able to take advantage of that and ensure that all Poco F1s across the board will ship with the UFS 2.1 storage. Another thing that you guys told us, I ran a bunch of polls on this a couple of months ago. Some of you will remember this. Again, with 256 gigabytes of storage, you might think that people don't need it, but we support an SD card here. It's expandable up to 256 gigabytes, but it's more for being able to transfer content, not really to expand your content, and this is something that you all told us. So this is a hybrid SIM, and we made sure to add it in based on your feedback. Yeah, that's good. I should mention again that this is one of the few flagship devices that support SD cards. Usually, you have to go to a mid-range device to get that kind of thing. All right, let's do a quick summary on the product. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we made a bunch of decisions very early on. We wanted 845, we wanted great performance, but sustained performance, so we used liquid cool. And of course, we wanted the 4K battery. We have top-of-the-line RAM and ROM insured across every single device, 4G Plus in one of the first devices here in India, and QC 3.0 just to top it all off. Pretty crazy? All right, so with this hardware, we think that our phone can really stand up to any other phone in the industry. So we ran a test. This is on a game called Arena of Valor. It's using the Poco F1 versus the iPhone 10. And what we did is we played 3 games in a row, measuring 3 things: FPS, thermal performance, and battery life. So let's take a look at the video and see how it works in practice. Great performance, pretty much constant 60 FPS in both devices, but better thermal performance and better battery life. This is why we call it the master of speed. And it shows what you can do when you build something from scratch and are focused on doing something from the very beginning. And we think we really achieved it here. Can't wait for everybody to try it and give us some feedback on it, because I think it's pretty awesome. All right, next up, which I think is also something that people have a lot of questions about, and that's the design. So here's another thing, another trend in the current flagships: glass. All current flagships should have glass. But is that what people really want? And this is one of the questions that we digged in with you guys many times to understand what you really think. So actually, let's do a quick poll here. How many people have a case on their phone? Raise your hand if you have a case on your phone. This journalists seem like they're typing, but it seems like I'm pretty sure most of you have cases on their phones. When we spoke to the fans, almost 100% of people told us that they put a case on their phone. But that kind of defeats the purpose of having a glass back. If you put a case on a phone with the glass back, all you have is a more fragile phone in a case. It doesn't really make sense. So we wanted to change this. We wanted to do something different. So this is your first look at the Poco F1, maybe first look, depending on what you've seen. We chose a single piece of hard-coated polycarbonate, which creates a seamless shape that's comfortable to hold. This is reinforced by an internal metal structure, and this makes sure that the phone feels really great and sturdy in the hand. I think if you recall, we brought around, I believe it was the Mi 4i or the Mi 4C, and we had a big discussion over what people preferred, and everybody loved that phone. When you pick it up, you can feel the quality, and when you pick up the Poco F1, you can see the similarities there. Polycarbonate also has a big functional impact. We're able to give the precisely curved 3D body, and it's much easier to manufacture compared to 3D glass. With this 3D body, this is why we can fit the bigger 4000 mAh battery with liquid cooled in a phone that still feels great in the hand. On the bottom, we have a USB Type-C port, which again supports Quick Charge 3.0 with the 9-volt 2-amp 18-watt charger in the box. Maybe I can just skip this one. So it does have a dedicated amp. I think some of you on some other Xiaomi devices really loved audio out of the headphone jack. Its audio on this device is pretty awesome. So what about the front? On the front side of the phone, it's a 6.18 Full HD Plus display. It's an LCD display. And you might be wondering what's going on up at the top, so we can dig into that a little bit. So we have over here all the components. This is the standard stuff, the proximity sensor, the 20 megapixel front camera. But to the left of the earpiece, we've added these components for infrared face unlock. And this gives you face unlock even in the dark. So we have two things here. There's the infrared light, which you'll see if you So let's take a look at how well it works. I was the model because I'm really not good at modeling. The technology is a lot cooler than my facial reaction. I think the best facial reaction is at the end, which is the last shot we did, so I was super happy about it. But in our internal lab tests, we've measured in completely dark out the brightness on the display, which is the last thing you'd want to do when it's night. So face unlock with the Poco F1 works really well, even in the dark. All right, I mentioned audio. Let's talk a little bit more about audio. Poco F1 has Dirac HD sound, so you get, again, really high quality sound. It has, we talked a couple months ago about Smart PA, which is a smart power amplifier that helps you get really loud audio through the speaker without any distortion. In the Poco F1, we actually have dual Smart PA, so it's even better than any device we've shipped before. And the audio during landscape mode, we do audio out of the earpiece for a stereo-like effect. Graphite black, excuse me. There's also the steel blue, which has a nice metallic sheen. Here's another view of that from the front and the back. This next one is my favorite. This is called the Rosso Red. This is finish. Another view of that one. Definitely check this out. It looks, I think, really good on photos as well. So we've talked a lot about Xiaomi, how Xiaomi helps us. So this is some of the quality tests that we do. You guys are familiar with some of these. I didn't notice this one. I'm not sure if I've seen it before. My favorite one is down here at the bottom, which is the dust test, where we roll the phone in a corn flour environment. Don't recommend doing that, but I'm glad that somebody did it somewhere. So this is an example of why. So I think
नीचे जा रहा है ना
बफरिंग हो गया
pretty cool, but it's time we didn't really have an answer for that. So we went back to the drawing board and figured out how to solve this problem. And we made this next version just for you. It's called the Poco F1 Armored Edition. It's actually imported from an American company called DuPont. It's also used, it was one of the major components in the spacesuit. This is, the thing that protected some of the astronauts during the Apollo 11 mission to space. But I think Kevlar is more commonly known as the material that's used in bulletproof vests. This phone is not bulletproof, but it uses the same material, which is, again, really, really cool. So you want to see what it looks like? I think particularly on this version, the red accents around the camera look really great up there. Kevlar is scratch and wear resistant, and it really feels amazing in your hand. It has a really nice grippy texture. So we didn't want to make just another glass phone. For those of you who told us they wanted something cool, Kevlar is most definitely cool. It's a phone that you really appreciate when you pull it out of the box, but you won't feel the need to immediately slap a case on it because it's too slippery and fragile. We think you'll really, really love this phone. All right, so let's take a look at all four of them together. Again, steel blue. All right, so we have a product video showing off some of these. about the materials of this phone. Hopefully it makes more sense now. When you put a case on it, you have a more durable phone. And if you really want something that feels premium, you have Kevlar, which is actually different. It doesn't look like just another glass phone. All right, I think the next natural section is the camera. This is another area where we really relied on Xiaomi's expertise, both in hardware and software. And our goal with the camera was to make it easy to get a great photo on the first try. So coming phones, the Mi 8, the Mix 2S, and the secondary sensor here is a 5 megapixel sensor to give you depth information for those portrait mode shots. The primary camera sensor has massive 1.4 micron pixels. The IMX363 is very similar to the IMX362 that Google used in the Pixel 2 last year. And basically, more light per pixel means better low light photography. The main camera also has something called dual pixel autofocus. This gives up to 12 million focusing points at any one time, which is almost 30 times the number of focusing points compared to the Samsung has in their top-of-the-line Galaxy and Note phones. So the Poco F1 went through a vigorous cycle of camera tuning in our labs. We spent a lot of time working in particular on the focusing speed, especially in low light. So here has a 1.12 micron sensor without dual pixel autofocus. So we shot another video here. Okay, so you can see how in low light, that's where the OnePlus 6 really struggles, because it has the smaller pixel size without dual pixel autofocus. Compared to the S9, again, pretty similar performance in low light focusing. So that's Poco F1 focusing. We really believe lets you shoot in the blink of an eye. Again, the goal is to make it so that you can get the right photo on the first shot. And we have a couple of examples here of sort of action shots. Good colors in the background. Here's another great example. Obviously a lot of movement here, and you can see how the dual pixel autofocus lets you capture this moment really, really quickly, which is something that I guess this like skateboarder is like practicing for Holi or something, I'm not really sure, but it does make for a good example. Again, something it's not easy to do again. So as many of you know, more so than just the hardware, the software is important. And because we're using the same main sensor that we used in the Mi 8, and we're also using Snapdragon 845, on camera tuning. And things like the AI camera in particular take a lot of time and resources to perfect. So it was super helpful to be able to rely on Xiaomi's camera team when we started work on the Poco F1 camera. Many of you know how AI works in cameras. So basically we've trained our algorithms optimal photo. We have a couple of examples here. This is backlight detection. Backlight here, kind of all the details in the clouds go away. Whereas if you compare it with the AI version, I can do that again. Particularly like in the upper left over there. Want to do a silhouette, just tap that button, you can get a more dramatic Instagram-worthy photo. It's pretty cool. So these icons are things that you'll see inside the camera app when you use it. So this is the default position, just says AI. Here we're shooting an image of food. When it recognizes, that icon will change. So here it says food, and then it's actually pretty decent. The problem is the main object of focus here is this building, obviously in the front. The lighting isn't that great. And if you look at some of the lines in buildings, the sharpness on the lines are really important because there's a lot of straight lines. So if we compare it to the AI version, it's a pretty big difference, right? Especially the lighting. Sharpness on the building, details in the clouds. Actually, if you think that we kind of faked this photo, you can see like these people over here, like this photo was taken in the same lighting condition. These people. Here's another tough shot looking directly at the sun. Everything is washed out. You can't really even see the sun. If we jump, particularly check out the buildings here in the front. If we jump to the AI version, you get a much deeper red. If you look at the sun in the background, again, you can identify the shape. And then you see different colors in the sky. You can just jump again. For India, training it on different scenes, different types of people, things like jewelry, colorful temples, different so let's take a look at a couple of the snaps. So I'm a little biased because I think try to get you know, a clear focusing on the dog. The problem with lowering the shutter speed is that the phone doesn't let in enough light. So here we've kind of combined the settings from the shutter speed and then made sure that HDR kicks in to get enough light in this photo so you get some nice color. The ripples of the water, again, these things can kind of be blurred depending on the focusing speed, but then if you don't have the right HDR settings, then you won't have enough light in the photo. So even in challenging conditions, this is indoor low lighting, building features are captured in sharp detail without much graininess. All right, so coming to the front camera. So on the front, we have a 20 megapixel high resolution camera. This is actually the same camera module that we're using in the Mi 8. So again, with software, we're able to give you a super pixel here. This gives you an effective mode. tuned it again specifically for India. It really enhances your selfies. Front camera, there aren't as many also works in group selfies. This is something that is a usable good photo is a result of these we build on top of Xiaomi's expertise both in hardware and software. Which is experience. And the software experience on the pocophone for Poco. It's a brand new interface that prioritizes the first is the all-new Poco launcher, which I'll get into in a little bit. A couple of months ago. So let me start. With two main features. The first is an app. Pointed out difference when people say, you know, look at how the stock Android App Store looks. Bottom, and this is because that's where your thumb is naturally, especially with the longer displays. Outside of app search, we have the ability to group things by MIUI. This is how most people organize their home screen, is they put all show up, you know, if you happen to install another communication app, it'll just show up. Group apps by color. So when you turn this on, you get this nice set of colors down here. So here we click on the green one, and it just brings up all the apps by color. I thought that I always looked in the app drawer alphabetically, but you'll notice that when an app happens to change so we have another cool little feature. It's hidden app icons. Swipe twice from the left. You can create your own password and then put apps in there as you like. Things that you can install from the Play Store. So here we kind of shuffle through a couple of these icons. This is another area where that color search really helps because different icon packs change the color, which just like throws me completely off. Super cool, super useful. as well. All right, so that's the Poco launcher, the first thing. The second thing is the turbocharged engine. And this again is a focus on performance. That's one of the things that people say. We want better performance for your foreground app and a much faster and more responsive swiping experience. Let's dig into these categories. First thing is faster app start. For app startups. So when you start up a new app, instead of trying to get new resources, we already have a fast lane available to make sure that you have enough resources to start an app immediately. We've actually tuned this for the most popular apps here, so the startup time is really fast, particularly for these apps, and it's 28% faster when we did some comparisons with some other popular OSs with the same hardware. We actually, I believe, yeah, we have a video here, so let's take a look at this. All right, so with these optimizations, we took about 36 of the apps versus 19 for the OnePlus 6. All right, so that's app startups. The third thing is a faster foreground app experience. So basically what we do here is we try to prioritize resources to the foreground app because that is what you're actually using. So typically on Android, there's a lot of processing. We try to take all of the system resources, CPU, RAM, RAM, and allocate it to that foreground app. Because again, that's what you're really doing, and you probably don't care about the performance of those background applications. And this makes a big difference, particularly in gaming scenarios. This is a MOBA called Arena of Valor. I'm actually really good at this game, so if anybody wants to challenge me, let me know. But it's not only the RAM and CPU, we also prioritize bandwidth to the foreground app. So if we click up here, this is if you happen to be downloading something in the background, what we do is we prioritize the resources, make sure that all of your bandwidth goes into this foreground app so you have a good ping. All right, so the